welcome back to my channel. I wanted to make a recent reads video because I've been reading a lot of books and I want to share what I can about those books with you. So it's not Friday, today is Wednesday, I guess. But I wanted to come on here and chat very briefly about some of the books that I've been reading. Some of them are books that came from the library and I want to return some of my books to the library because right now I have 40 books checked out. I have 40 books checked out. 6 of them are books that I have been assigned to read and judge for the BookTube prize. So there's that. But then there are 34 other books that I have out from the library that it's out of control. It's out of control, my library situation. So the books that I've been finishing, I need to start returning those to the library. So let me share what I can with you. So let's do that. So it's Black History Month and I created this big TBR with several books by Black authors that I wanted to read this month. And I haven't read all of them, but I've read some and I have really enjoyed what I've been reading. So let's start with those. So I read Giovanni'S Room by James Baldwin and I love this. I love this. We're reading about a man who starts off in New York and then goes to Paris to live, and it's a little bit about how he is seeing himself evolve, his identity evolve from who he was when he was a young man growing up, and his father and his aunt who raised him, their expectation for him, and as he is starting to assert his own independent view, how comfortable or uncomfortable he feels about those changes. And then he goes to Paris to live and he's involved in a relationship with one person and kind of stumbles or falls into a relationship with someone else, and a little bit about how that weighs on him, and you know, the things that we fall into, the experiences that we kind of fall into. We don't necessarily say we make cognizant choices about them, but kind of fall into a place. I know I keep saying that. And how we feel about those choices that are kind of thrust upon us. So I thought that this was brilliant in its exploration of self and identity and independent and not so independent choices. Brilliant. I read this like it was autofiction, and I don't know that it is. The writing is very it's very intimate. The author is giving you kind of stream of consciousness thought process at a lot of points, and yeah, I thought that this was brilliant. I haven't read anything by James Baldwin that I didn't feel like it was brilliant. So highly recommend Giovanni'S Room if you are kind of in the valley about whether you want to read James Baldwin or read this book. Pick this one up. And then I read Mercy by Toni Morrison. This was a buddy read with Heidi and Doris and Patrice, and we all really enjoyed this. I love this book. I'd give it 6 stars if I could, but you know, we're limited to 5 stars, so this is complete 5 stars. It starts off a little murky and we're reading about life in the 1600s. And so we're reading about a young Black woman who is enslaved on a property, and we read about her being moved from one property to the next, and every chapter switches perspective. There are a few that come back to the original young woman, Florence, but we get a lot of different perspectives of this time from people of very different backgrounds. So we're reading from the perspective of Florence, who's a young girl who has been enslaved. Her mother and her family are enslaved as well, and then we see her moving from one plantation, from one property to the next, and we read from the perspective of the person who moves her. We read from the perspective of his wife. We read from other women who live on the property that she goes to. And eventually we explore the story of Florence's life from a little bit more of an abstract gaze. But Florence is not the only story that we get really immersed and invested in. And as a matter of fact, maybe our thoughts about Florence changes, tone or emotions about her change. But yeah, a lot in this book about commitment and what a person may experience as enslavement, whether it is voluntary or people who approach this kind of relationship as something that is temporary and that will allow them to elevate their station in life. So like talking about people who signed on to be indentured servants and what that meant for their lives while they were in servitude, but also how maybe the period of their contract changed as their situations changed, as they made different choices. So yeah, this one also explored a little bit about the religion and the impact of religion and religious choice, religious freedom, what that meant in the 1600s. Of course, because this is 1690s, we're reading about America before it became the United States of America. So before the Revolutionary War. And yeah, there's just so much about this book that's brilliant. So like I said, it kind of starts off a little murky. You're not really sure where it's going. And for me, not really sure who the characters are. But man, when you get into this book, brilliant, fantastic. So thrilled to have read that. Then I read Bernardine Evaristo's Manifesto. This is a memoir, and it is a book that I am judging for the BookTube prize, so I can't talk too much about this, but also happy that I read this in February, because Bernardine Evaristo was the first Black British woman to have won the Booker Prize. It was the same year that Margaret Atwood won the prize. I don't want to say she shared the prize, because each book, I think, won the Booker Prize on its own. It's just they happened to have two winners that year, 2019. And her book, Girl, Woman, Other, was the one that won the Booker Prize. And so she talks a little bit about her writing process, and she talks about her relationships and her life growing up as the daughter of a Nigerian immigrant and a British white woman, and what life was like with her family. And so yeah, read Black British author in February for Black History Month as well. It's also a book that I'm judging, so I can't talk more about the book, just mentioning it. Then I read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this is written in verse about a man who dies aboard fictional representation of a man whose plane crashes. Do you remember right after 9/11? So yeah, in 2001, when a plane leaving New York going to the Dominican Republic pretty much just broke apart in the sky. And yeah, so we read about the fallout of the plane crash and how it affects these two girls, one living in New York and one living in the Dominican Republic. And so this is written in verse about those two girls from the perspective of those two girls, and we see how their lives are like before and how their lives are like after this incident. And this was brilliant. In the acknowledgements, Elizabeth Acevedo writes thanks to her editing team at HarperCollins, and she says, "Thanks for helping me tell stories that deal in tenderness and immense love of my community." And that is something that really flows through here. Elizabeth Acevedo, with her background of Dominican Republic heritage, but someone who is living in the United States, like, you could see her love for her culture, her love for her background, and how she expresses that duality. And here she deals with the difficult subject of loss and how that is experienced by different people, how sometimes you can lose someone even while they are physically present, but also the things that you gain when you lose other things. Like losing your innocence to gain the value of experience. There's that. A lot of things, a lot of big topics are covered here, but dealt with in such a way that a young reader could understand and an older reader could appreciate as well. So yeah, highly recommend Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I also have been reading some things that I haven't yet finished. So let me show you physical copies. I'm reading Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson. I think I may have said his name at other points. And so I'm about 2/3 of the way in. I'm at page 140, and this goes up to about 240, so maybe close to 2/3. And this is interconnected short stories, and we're reading about the characters in this place, Winesburg, Ohio. And I'm loving this, buddy reading this with Columbus and Rosalie. And I'm still reading The Devil in the White City, Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair That Changed America by Erik Larson. And I'm not going through this as fast as I had hoped. I don't even think I've gotten to page 100 yet. I have not. I'm at page 61. And I'm thinking that I might not finish this month, but I'm working towards it. Because I started it, and so I want to finish it, because I feel like if I put it down for too long, I won't get back to it within a reasonable time, and I'm going to have to abandon it come back and start all over, and I don't want to do that. I mean, I like Erik Larson's writing, but I have to say, reading this by myself is a lot different of an experience, because all the Erik Larson that I have read before, I've buddy read them with Patrice and Doris and Heidi, and I love our buddy reads. So ladies, if you guys want to weigh in on this book, let me know. I'm joking. They've read it already. They read it before I came onto the scene with them. I mean, so I'm gonna get to that. Gonna finish that at some point. I'm also reading this. I'm reading this aloud on my channel. So if you want to read along with me, we are reading Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God, and I love, love, love this book. So yeah, that's what I'm currently reading. Other things that I have finished, electronic books. So Patrice and Doris and Heidi and I were having a conversation the other day about Netgalley, and Patrice was downloading some Netgalley things, and I said, "Oh, Netgalley! I should go back and start looking at books that I downloaded and never reviewed, see if I can finish them up." And so there are some books that I found that Netgalley had sent me electronic versions, and I didn't read them, and then they archived the books because the books went to publication. And so because I want to improve my statistics on Netgalley, I decided I was going to find the printed copies and read them. So I have a few books out from the library, like this one, which I read, and I actually did read years ago and failed to write a review on Netgalley. I think there might have been something wrong at the time, so I'm gonna have to revisit this story collection, A.M. Holmes' Days of Awe and The Perfect Nanny by Karen Hamilton. Those are books that I had gotten Netgalley copies from, Netgalley downloads, and just didn't do what I was supposed to do with Netgalley. So now I got these from the library: The Perfect Date by Evelyn Lozada and Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, which I'm pretty sure I read, but I can't remember. So yeah, I'm gonna have to read these again at some point. So you might see those in my March TBR. Sneak peek at my March TBR. So I can tidy up my Netgalley stats. But yeah, those are what I'm going to be reading. But that was intent. That was the original intention for going on to Netgalley. But then I went on and I found some books that I wanted to read right now. So I downloaded some other things from Netgalley. But because I didn't want to fall in the same pattern, fall in the same lurch where these books, they come to me for free and I don't read them in time, and then they disappear, and then I have to go try to find copies, I decided I was going to read them right now. So I finished 3 books from Netgalley, and I am so proud of myself. But I'm also really happy that I read these books because they were fantastic. So earlier in the month, I told you about A Likely Story by Leigh, McMullan, Abramson, which I really liked. That was a 4-star for me. Then 7 Rules for Breaking Hearts by Kristyn J. Miller, which I didn't like as much because I think that book maybe needed a little bit more editing before it would be great in my book. But then I read The Cuban Heiress by Chanel Cleeton, which I really, really enjoyed. And this one was set aboard a ship called the Mora Castle, which until the end of the book, when I read the author's note, when I finished the novel, was when I realized that the Mora Castle was a real ship and that this was historical fiction. Like some things in the book, I was like, this is way too much twists and turns. And then author's note told me that those were real historical things that happened. So gave me a new appreciation for the book when I was done. But I really enjoyed this. This was set, like I said, aboard a ship, and we're reading about a man and woman who are engaged to be married, although I think neither one of them really wants to be married, and they're both lying to each other, both pretending to be richer than they are. As my daughter's watch alarming, and I can't turn it off, so forgive that. So yeah, historical fiction, and like it says in the title, The Cuban Heiress. So one of the women has a Cuban background, but it's not the woman who we think is the main character in the book. But then the ship is touring the Caribbean, and so we get a couple of scenes that actually happen in Cuba, and we're talking a little bit about the revolution that's happening in Cuba. And the book is set in the early 1900s, so love reading about Caribbean history, especially when it comes kind of unexpected. Now, I know choosing a book with Cuba in the title should tell you that Cuba is going to be mentioned in the book, but I don't know. I didn't really know how much. So, love that. Love when I get Caribbean reading unplanned. So, read that from Netgalley. And I feel like this is the kind of book that when it is published, formally published, that I may revisit and chat about again. But yeah, high ratings for The Cuban Heiress by Chanel Cleeton. And then I finished just last night The Chemistry of Love by Sariah Wilson. And man, did I enjoy this. This was a STEM romance. And I loved it. I loved it. It was about a young woman who's 26 years old and she's working as a cosmetic scientist in a cosmetic company. And she falls for her boss. And then she decides to quit so she could pursue a relationship with her boss because he has told her that they have a rule against fraternization. So she decides to quit to pursue her boss, but also to pursue her dreams of opening her own cosmetic company. And it's a little bit about her, falling in love, but not with the person that she thought. It's cute, but it also has a lot of science. Like as someone with a chemistry background myself, like, man, did I love this book. I really, really appreciated this book. I feel like it's the kind of book that you could read as study material for your chemistry class. Like, it talks about so many things in chemistry and engineering, like thermodynamics, laws, and I mean, okay, so the book is cute. It's also really cute. And I love how the author ties the cuteness with the science, like using melting points of elements to rate how hot someone is. And they talk about hotness like all the time. Is that what 26-year-old women say? I don't know. But I love like comparing someone's hotness to tungsten, which has a melting point of like 3,400 degrees Celsius. I don't remember, but it was cute. It was really cute and it was really great and I loved it. Loved this book. Like, to read about people falling in love and seeing innocence and fantasy kind of come together. And I love that these two characters, the two characters who end up being together, they're just perfect for each other. They are probably the people that other people would say, nah, that person's a little too weird for me. But it just proves that there's a saying in Jamaica, every hoe of him stick a bush, every hoe of him stick a bush, every hoe has a stick that is perfect for it. And you may not see the stick because the stick is still a part of a tree somewhere in the woods. But every person has their perfect someone, and I love how the author explored this. So yeah, enough gushing about The Chemistry of Love by Sariah Wilson. Is that her name? Sariah Wilson. So when that book is formally published, I'm getting a copy because I'm gonna have to tell you guys more about it. So yeah, then I started reading The God of Good Looks by Breanne McIvor, Caribbean author, Trinidadian author. And I just started that one this morning. So I'm loving it so far. It's about a young woman who's a model and also an aspiring writer in Trinidad. And it's cute. I haven't read anything by Breanne McIvor yet, even though I follow her on Instagram. So I want to read this, want to finish it so I can hype it up. Because, hello, Caribbeathon is coming in just a few more months. And I'm reading all the Caribbean books that I can from lots of different places, different kinds of books, so I can recommend them to you. So yeah, that's what I've been reading and doing in the last few days. A lot of books got read. And I know this was supposed to be brief. And I think it was. The timing might say differently. But thank you so much for stopping by and hearing about my recent reads. And I hope you got a recommendation of something that you may want to check out now, because I have gushed about it. So let me know what that title is. What title resonated with you from all the books that I have read thus far this month? Lots of reading has been getting done. Whether or not I stick to the TBR, that's another issue entirely. But we're not gonna get distracted by that. So thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up. Let me know what book you want to read from my list, or what book you've been reading recently that you have loved. What's the last book that you rated 5 stars for me? It's The Chemistry of Love. Finished last night. So let's chat on there, and until we come back for another video, happy reading. Bye.